The church was supposed to be holy ground that morning. My daughter Iris was being christened, and I had prayed it would be a fresh start, a moment of blessing. But instead, it turned into the stage for a reckoning I had been waiting on for years. It began with my sister Veronica. She rose to her feet in the middle of the pastor's words and started clapping, sharp and mocking, like each strike was meant to bruise me. "Bravo, Hazel. Really bravo." Her voice dripped with the same venom she'd used my entire life. Then she struck harder. "At least this child won't grow up fatherless like the last one." Laughter broke out, cruel and careless. My cousin Bethany had her phone raised, recording as if my humiliation was entertainment. Even the church elders smirked. People who had known me since I was baptized in this very building now delighted in my shame. And then my father stood. Warren Fitzgerald, the untouchable patriarch. His suit was immaculate, his expression cold, his voice booming like thunder meant to drown me out. Some women never learn. They keep making the same poor choices over and over again. The congregation erupted again, his words cutting through me more deeply than Veronica's. My mother, Daphne, sat paralyzed beside him, her hymnal clutched so tightly her hands shook. She said nothing, she never did. My brother Garrett lowered his eyes. Silence was the family's only loyalty. I stood at the altar, holding baby Iris. My white dress suddenly felt like a bullseye. Pastor Coleman had stopped mid-blessing, uncertainty etched on his kind face. And that's when the true strike came, not from me, but from the one voice no one expected. "Grandpa, should I tell them what you made me promise to keep secret?" Every head turned. My son Colby stood on the pew, his small body trembling but his voice steady. His navy suit hung awkwardly on his frame, but his words filled the church with a power no one could laugh at. Warren froze. His smug mask cracked. He barked, "Colby, sit down." But my son didn't move. His little chin lifted as though he had inherited a strength I thought I'd lost. "You told me lying is a sin. You said keeping bad secrets makes God sad. You said if I told Mommy about the lady who comes to your office, you'd stop coming to my baseball games. But I don't think God wants me to lie anymore." The laughter was gone. Silence swallowed the room. My father, the pillar of the church, the empire builder with dealerships across 3 counties, stood exposed. For years, Warren had made me his scapegoat. My failed relationships, my children with absent fathers, my mistakes, he paraded them as proof of my weakness. I believed him. I wore my shame like shackles. But in that moment, watching my 7-year-old unravel the man everyone worshipped, I saw the truth. I was never the disgrace. He was. And here's the part no one knew. I had been waiting for this. The christening wasn't just about Iris. It was about revenge. For months, I had been collecting the pieces my father thought he'd buried, financial documents, photographs, testimonies from women he'd silenced with money. I knew this day would come, and I chose today, in front of the family, the community, God himself, because humiliation was the only language my father understood. Colby's courage was the spark. I was the fire. I stepped forward, my voice cutting clean through the air. "You all have mocked me for being a single mother, for failing at love. But the man you bow to has been living a double life. Affairs, bribes, lies. He built his empire not on hard work but on betrayal." Gasps rippled through the pews. Bethany lowered her phone, realizing she was recording the destruction of a legend. Veronica's smirk collapsed. My mother wept silently, years of silence finally breaking through her eyes. Warren's face was red, his mouth open, but for the first time in my life, he had no words. I turned back to the altar, holding Iris close, Colby standing bravely at my side. Pastor Coleman, shaken but resolute, lifted his hand again. "Let us continue." And so the baptism went on, not as the redemption story I thought I needed, but as the day my father's reign ended. They wanted to laugh at me. Instead, they watched the fall of the Fitzgerald king. This was not humiliation. This was justice. This was revenge. When the baptism ended, no one clapped. No congratulations. No polite chatter in the aisles. Only stunned silence hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. I walked down the aisle with Iris in my arms and Colby's hand in mine. The same aisle where my parents once carried me as an infant, where Warren strutted every Sunday, where my family's name had been spoken with reverence. Now it was nothing but a gauntlet of wide-eyed stares. At the church doors, Veronica tried to stop me. Her hand shot out, her nails digging into my arm. "How dare you humiliate this family in public?" she hissed. I met her eyes, steady cold. The family humiliated itself. I just told the truth. I shook her off and walked into the sunlight, my children beside me. That day wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. By evening, whispers had spread through town like wildfire. Parishioners called each other. Employees at Warren's dealerships traded rumors over cigarettes in the break room. The women my father thought he'd paid into silence began to find their courage. One of them emailed me proof. Another dropped an anonymous envelope at my door. His empire was crumbling, brick by dirty brick. For years, Warren had thrived on my silence. He knew I wouldn't speak because he taught me to feel small, weak, undeserving. But once my son spoke for me, I realized my silence was over. I didn't just expose him in church, I made sure the truth stuck. I leaked the documents to the press. I forwarded bank statements to investigators. I handed over names to people who would listen. Every secret he buried, I dug up and laid out under the sun. By the end of the month, the mighty Warren Fitzgerald was no longer a pillar of anything. His dealerships were under investigation. His name was dragged across the evening news. He couldn't step into a restaurant without whispers following him like a curse. And me? For the first time, I walked through town with my head high. Neighbors who once sneered at me now looked me in the eye with something new: respect. Or maybe fear. Either way, I'd take it. Veronica tried to save him. She posted online rants about family loyalty and disgraceful daughters. But the truth was louder than her lies. My brother Garrett stayed quiet, just as he always had. And my mother, she surprised me most. One night, she came to my door with a suitcase. She said nothing at first, just stared at the floor. Then, in the softest voice, she whispered, "I should have left him years ago." I opened the door wider. For once, I wasn't the one seeking refuge. I was the one giving it. My revenge wasn't just about destroying Warren. It was about freeing myself, my children, and even my mother from his shadow. The day of Iris's christening became legend in our town. Some call it a scandal. I call it justice. Because revenge, I've learned, isn't about rage or violence. It's about reclaiming the power someone stole from you. And in that church, on that morning, surrounded by laughter meant to break me, I found my power again. They wanted me to bow my head in shame. Instead, I raised it higher than ever before. And Warren Fitzgerald? He will never stand taller than me again. The weeks that followed were a blur of chaos for Warren. For me, they were clarity. Every headline cut deeper into his once spotless image: community leader under fire for financial misconduct. Car dealership tycoon tied to infidelity scandal. Fitzgerald legacy in ruins. Each article felt like a stone removed from the fortress he had built around himself. People who had once bowed their heads when he entered a room now crossed the street to avoid him. But revenge is never just about the person who wronged you. It's about everyone who stood by, laughing while you burned. And I hadn't forgotten the smirks in that church, the ones who delighted in my pain. So I made sure every single one of them remembered that day. Bethany, my cousin who filmed the scene for her own amusement, suddenly found her little recording circulating everywhere, not to mock me, but to immortalize Warren's fall. Her attempt at cruelty became evidence of his disgrace. She stopped answering calls. My Aunt Patricia, who giggled behind her hand, avoided eye contact in the grocery store. And Veronica, oh Veronica, she became the loudest defender of my father. She begged reporters to stop hounding him, painting me as an ungrateful daughter. But the more she spoke, the more pathetic she looked. The town began to turn on her too. I didn't need to lift another finger. Their shame devoured them. Meanwhile, I focused on my children. Colby, once so timid, walked into school with a new kind of courage. His teacher pulled me aside one afternoon, eyes shining. He's holding himself differently. Like he knows he has a voice now. And Iris, sweet Iris, baptized under a storm of truth, grew stronger every day. She was my symbol of rebirth. One evening, I stood on the porch with my mother, watching Colby play in the yard. She held Iris in her arms, humming softly. For the first time in decades, her shoulders seemed lighter. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "Exposing him. Ending it this way." I looked at her, at the woman who had spent her life in silence. "No. Do you?" She shook her head slowly. "I regret not having your courage." That was the moment I knew my revenge had gone deeper than I planned. It hadn't just broken Warren. It had broken the chains he wrapped around us all. By winter, Warren's empire was dust. Investigations piled up, debts surfaced, and even the church stripped him of his seat on the board. The man who once spoke like a king was now just an old man with nothing left but bitterness. And me? I wasn't just Hazel, the single mother people whispered about. I became Hazel, the woman who stood up, who spoke truth, who ended a dynasty of lies. Justice had been served. Revenge had been taken. And with the ashes of my father's legacy at my feet, I finally felt what peace really was. But peace is not the same as silence. And I swore I would never be silent again.